How to play bass guitar. Well, I had a friend recently ask me about some videos to watch to learn how to play the bass, and I was thinking, like when you go on YouTube, there's bass lessons, but there's like the first lesson, and then where's the second lesson, where's the third lesson? How do you know what lesson to do when? So my thought was, what if I just crammed everything into one video? What if I sat down with you for like half an hour and just threw everything at you? You might have to pause it, you might have to go away and practice, you might have to come back to it, but at least you would know where it is. It's all in this one video. So make sure that you save it to your watch later list. But this is everything you need to know about bass in like half an hour. There's some bonus stuff on the end. We're going to learn a bit of slap. So stay tuned, check it out, and I hope it helps you. Okay, so real quick to start with, we're going to give you the generic thing that you get at the start of all bass lessons, which is a breakdown of the parts. It's just so when we're talking about stuff, you know what we're talking about. So we're just going to cover it quickly. This main part we call the body, this bit we call the neck, this bit we call the head. These are the tuning pegs, which we will learn how to use. This bit here is referred to as the nut. These metal bars are called frets. This whole board here being called the fretboard. The dots are also called inlays. Normally we refer to them as dots. These bits here are for your strap to go on. Pretty simple. Hook your strap on, chuck it over your shoulder. These here are the pickups. They pick up the vibration of the strings and convert that into a signal to go to your amplifier. Okay, so from the pickups it comes through your control section here. Depending what bass you have, these controls will be different. Generally you will get like a volume and a tone at least. These ones are a bit different. They've got balances between different pickups and all sorts. Anyway, this is the bridge. There's a whole lot of adjustments on there. If you don't know what you're doing, don't touch them. Okay, to make sure your bass is set up right, you want to know that you're not getting buzzing while you're playing, as long as you're playing right. We'll cover some technique stuff for that. You want to make sure when you look at your strings here that they are not miles away from the fretboard, which will make it hard to play. It's really hard to get a camera shot on that. But see, we're reasonably close there. If there was a massive gap there, then it's worth getting it set up, which if you don't know what you're doing, take it into your music store and get someone who does know what they're doing to do it for you. Okay, on the back, sometimes you will get basses with batteries in them like this one. This one is because it is active. Sometimes you'll get that because it's a tuner. If you have one of those basses that takes a battery, don't leave the jack plugged in when you're not using it. It will cause that battery to flatten faster. Cool. This is the output jack. You go from here to your amp, which is switched on and makes noise. If you want to unplug this and your amp is on, unplug the amp end first. It'll stop it from going bang in your ear. Cool. That's a quick rundown of the parts. Let's get into it. Okay, so this note circle page here is available to download for free on the website. I'll show you where to do that shortly, but these are the notes that are in music. Okay, basically we have an alphabet from A to G, and then it just carries on around, and it just goes around and around until you get into such high pitches that only dogs can hear them. In between each note, so between A and B for example, we have another note which would be a B flat or an A sharp. Okay, so we'll take a quick look at our keyboard to help us understand these sharps and flats. So on a keyboard, sharps and flats are all on the black keys. If I lay out my other notes, I would have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so to sharpen a note means to move it up a semitone. A semitone is just the distance from one note to the next, whatever that note is. So it's either from here to here or from here to here. You'll notice no sharp or flat. We'll talk about that shortly too. Okay, so to sharpen a note is up a semitone, to flatten a note is down a semitone. Okay, just while we're talking about semitones, to go a full tone would miss one out and go to the next note, wherever that would be. So from here to miss out a note, we would end up there if we were traveling a tone. Little side note there. But we would look at this one here quickly. This is our D. So if I move that down a semitone, I get D flat. If I take the C and I move it up a semitone, I get C sharp. So C sharp and D flat are the same note. Okay, which one you call it depends on which key you're in, but don't worry about that for now. If you see a C sharp, it's this note. If you see a D flat, it's also this note. So on the bass, all of these are going to be set out all in a straight line, which we will look at next. But the important keys here to remember are these two here, B and C, and E and F. Okay, there are no sharps or flats between B and C or E and F. Okay, it's just straight from the next one to the next. Otherwise, you're going to have a sharp or a flat in between. Right, so now let's look at the bass neck. Okay, so here is a picture of the neck of the bass. You can also download this on groundbreakcreative.com for free, and you can print it out so you can fill in the notes, or you can just draw it yourself. I've just put it there to make life easy for you so you don't have to draw stuff, and you'll see all the gaps here that I have left for you to fill in. Okay, so all we would do is, using our note circle, we would go from one note to the next. So after E would be F, because we don't have a sharp or flat in between. Next we would have an F sharp, and then a G, and then a G sharp, and then an A, and then a sharp or a B flat. We could call it either. I'm just talking in sharps because they tend to be more common to hear, but you can call it either. And then our B, and then our C, no sharp or flat in between, and then our C sharp, then our D, then our D sharp, then our E. So you'll notice that once we get down to this double dot here, the 12th fret, we're back at our E, and that is a full octave because there are 12 notes in music. So by the time we get here, we are starting all over again, and it just carries on up. So that's why this picture only goes up to the 12th fret, and that's all you need to learn, because using this as reference, you know your next note is going to be the same as your first fret, making that F here. So all you need to do is do that on each of the strings, and then once you've filled all that out, what we want to do is start remembering some specific points around what's in the first fret, particularly just on these top two strings to start with, what the notes in the first, third, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 12th are. The 12th ones are going to be easy because they're the same as the open strings. But what that does is it gives us reference points. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the bass, the actual bass now, to have a look, and I'll show you what I mean. Before we get into all these note positions again, let's just tune real quickly. Let's learn how to do that, because we now know what our open strings are meant to be, so let's make sure that they are what they are meant to be. Okay, so you can get little plug-in tuners, you can get tuner pedals. I'd encourage you to get a tuner. Don't necessarily try to tune by ear unless your ear is really good. That's something that you're going to have to develop over time, and make sure you subscribe to my channel, because that's something we will do some work on down the track. You can get apps. Okay, some apps are good, some apps are not. Oh, I've pushed a button. I like this Boss one, tends to work quite well. So that's what we're going to look at today. Okay, so we've got our tuner there. And what we are trying to do on, try and point in the right direction on our tuner, is we are trying to get the right note in the middle. So our low note here is E, and we're trying to get that green in the middle. So if I'm flat, I'm actually dropping down to a D sharp, and you'll see it comes before it, and then I'm on it there, A, and we just do the same thing for all of those. Cool. So in terms of your tuning pegs there, you really need to know which way is up and which way is down, which you can watch the tuner or you can hear it, whether you're going up or down. Okay, if you're ever unsure about what the tuner is telling you, and this is something also to practice to help develop your ear, is to set your low E if you can, and then there's two ways of tuning by ear. So you can play the 5th fret on one string and the next string open. They are the same note. Okay, the other way to do it on a bass is to play harmonically. So to play harmonically might be a little bit hard to start with, but all you do is right above the fret, you're just going to rest your finger there. You're not pressing it down, it's just resting on there. And you're going to get that sound. And what you can do is play over the 5th fret and the 7th fret. So 5th fret on the low E, 5th fret on the A, 7th fret on the A, sorry. And they should be the same. Okay, make sure nothing else is touching the string. So what I'll do is I'll just throw that out so you can hear it. Okay, see how they fight each other? Okay, and the closer that they get, they come into line with each other. Cool. That's about my A there. See, the tuner is still that little bit more accurate, right? Cool, so that is how to tune. Right, now let's look again at these notes. Okay, so on the neck of the bass here, just like our picture, we're going to find these notes. So again, we're just going to focus on these top 2 strings. I call these the top 2 strings. Technically, people call these the top 2 strings because they're higher in pitch. These ones are lower in pitch, but just to be uncomplicated, let's say these are the top 2 strings because they're physically on the top. Cool. So what we're going to do is lay all those notes out. We know our open strings are E, A, D, G. Okay, easy to remember those 4, E, A, D, G. It's 4 notes. Not that hard. You can make something up if you want to. Eat all day, grow, something like that, or whatever. But E, A, D, G, easy. If you had a 5 string, you would have a low B here. A 6 string would then also have a high C on top. The relationship between the strings always stays the same. I suggest you start with a 4 string because it's more relatable to guitar and it's simpler. Cool. So here we go on our E string. We're going to go open E, F, because there's no sharp or flat between E and F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, because there's no sharp or flat between B and C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. Okay, that is our 12th fret. If we were to carry on, that would be F. Same as that note, everything starts again. F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, so on and so forth, up the neck. Cool. Next string, A, open A sharp, B, C, no sharp or flat in between those, sharp, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, no sharp or flat, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, carries on, so on and so forth. Okay, nice and simple. There's a reason I want you to focus on just those 2 strings, which we will talk about shortly. But for now, let's move on. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at your right hand. So if you're right-handed, this is down this end. Okay, if you are right-handed and you naturally want to sit with the bass around this way with your left hand down this end, don't. Turn it over, okay? There's a reason that people do that, and it's simply a mirror image thing, because when you see somebody play the guitar, your instinct, especially when you're a kid, is to mirror image them, okay? But you actually find that a lot harder to learn. Just learn to play it around the right way and your life will be easier. If you're left-handed, when I say left, you say right. When I say right, you say left. Okay, but you need a left-handed bass. Okay, so first thing, we need somewhere to put our thumb. So if I'm playing these higher up strings, higher up in tone strings, I can rest on a lower string. Okay, but when I'm playing my low E here, I need somewhere to rest it, which will generally be on the edge of a pickup. Okay, and then I'm just going to walk these two fingers. My first two fingers are going to walk one after the other. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Just alternating like that. Okay, you will see people play bass like that. Don't. It's wrong. Okay, that is only going to hinder you and slow you down as you progress. Learn this now. Okay, because when you want to play real fast, you're going to need both those fingers to do it. And there are some other techniques that you really need to be using both those fingers to be able to do them. Okay, the further back towards the bridge that you play, the tighter that sound gets, the closer the neck, the looser. So we don't want to be too far back, we don't want to be right against the bridge where it's going to be hard for us to play, but we want to sort of be as far back as we can get with ease of flow. Okay, talking ease of flow, I don't want to be hooking under the string with those fingers. Okay, I don't got to play it hard because the pickups are doing all the work to amplify anything. I want these just to glide over the top. Cool, so you can practice playing through the strings: E, A, D, G. Cool, practice going up and down. Make sure those fingers are alternating. Let's look at your left hand. First thing we're going to do with your left hand is we're going to separate these fingers. You're about to see what I mean. Find a flat surface, lay it down like this. This is an exercise that you can do anywhere. You can do it while you're at school, while you're at work, whatever. All you need is a flat surface. It's going to take some time to train your hand to do this. I want you to move each one of these individually. Sounds easy. Let's try it. Okay, thumb first. This one, that one, that one, that one, and back. Okay, so you need to be able to do that. You probably can't at the moment. You'll find your hands getting all tied up down this end. There is a reason for that, but we want to progress this to the point of being able to do this. Okay, that's when you know that your fingers are properly separated. Okay, so the reason they're all tied together is because when you're a little kid and you're taught to do anything with your hand, you grab stuff, you catch stuff, whatever, it's all about these fingers working together, and your brain has trained them to operate that way. You just need to retrain it so that we can use them individually on the fretboard. Okay, so playing notes on the fretboard. Let's look at our A note here, 5th fret on our E string. Okay, when I play that note, the position of that note is actually where the fret is. So the fret is actually playing the note. All I'm doing with my finger is I'm holding the string against the fret. Okay, so I don't want to be on top of the fret where I'm going to hinder what the fret is doing. I don't want to be too far behind the fret where the string is going to be free to vibrate on that fret. I want to be right behind it, and I want to hold down nice and tight. Okay, if I hold it too loose, it'll rattle. If I hold it too far back, it'll rattle more. Okay, got to get it nice and tight. So just try that one note to start with, getting it nice and tight, no rattles, and alternating these fingers. Cool. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to start trying to use these fingers individually, so you can just do 4 frets on each string, one after the other. Cool. That's your first exercise. Play back and forward, make sure you're alternating at this end. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to learn a scale. I know that sounds boring. When you think of scales, you think of an old piano teacher with a stick that she's going to whack you with. That is not the case. Scales for us are real simple. We really only need to know 2 of them, and everything in music derives from those 2 scales, but it is important that you do know them, so when we start talking about numbers and that sort of thing, you know what we're talking about. Okay, so real easy, let's do an A major scale. We're going to go 5th fret on the low E string up to 7th fret, so I'm going to use index and then pinky. Those are our first 2 notes, 1 and 2. Okay, my 3 is going to be 4th fret on the A string. My 4 is the very next fret, which is 5th fret on the A string. 7th fret on the A string for my 5. 4th fret on the D string for my 6. My 7 is going to be 6th fret on the D string. 7th fret on the D string will be my 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That 8 is also a 1, because 1 and 8 are the same note. That's where we get the word octave. Okay, oct being 8, they are the same note. So when we talk about octaves, the same note higher up, that is, or lower down, if it's a lower octave, that is what we are talking about, 1 and 8. Cool, so remember how we just learned the notes on the top 2 strings? This is why, because if I want a high up A, I know how to find it. A high up F sharp is here, because I know that's an F sharp, okay? Same here, if I want a high up D, same pattern, okay? Because this scale that we learn goes anywhere we want it to go on the neck. Okay, that's the joy of being a bass player. It's not quite the same for guitarists. It's definitely not the same for keyboard players. But for us, you want C sharp major, just start at C sharp. I played an extra note there, didn't I? Cool, nice and easy. So those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Those are the degree numbers of the scale. So anytime we talk about numbers, whether those are the numbers within a chord, if we're talking about playing a pattern like a 1, 5, 8 pattern, or 1 and 3, or if I'm talking about playing a third, if I'm talking about playing a 7, okay, those are my numbers. That's how I find them. Okay, there are other arrangements for finding those numbers, which we will look at shortly, right after we learn the minor scale. Really all we need to know with the minor scale is the difference between the major and the minor scale, which is that the minor scale has a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. Okay, so the pattern's real easy. If I start at this A, 1 and 2 are the same, my 3 is flattened, so it's now back here, 4 is the same, 5 is the same, 6 is flattened, so it's now back here, 7 is flattened, so it's now back here, 8 is in the same place. So that pattern. Cool. Okay, so again, when we play that major scale, we want to be using these alternate fingers. So index, pinky, index, second finger, pinky, index, third finger, pinky. Okay, so you'll remember that those 2 middle fingers are going to alternate during that scale. Okay, so that's something you can practice playing. Remember alternating down here too. Okay, if you want to increase your ear training further, sing along with it in the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not much of a singer, but you can do it in your own time. That will help with your ear training. Cool? Okay, on to the next step. Okay, so I'm just going to cover for you really quickly how to read tab, because a lot of stuff you'll see online will be written in tab. I'm not a big fan of reading tabs, but I prefer to get chords or actually just work stuff out. But you know, when you're starting out, you want to learn a bunch of songs. Tabs is what you're going to see. Okay, so for a 4-string bass, what you're going to see is basically 4 lines. Okay, which are hopefully going to be labeled with the tuning. Okay, E, A, D, G on there. E, A, D, G. Okay, sometimes you will see that this E here is a D instead, in which case you drop that tuning down a tone to a D, and some songs are played like that. The reason for that is it makes life really easy for the guitarist, but we don't need to get too much into that. It's just, it drops it low. Cool? Okay, so you'll notice that looking at, these are our 4 strings, right? Okay, so that is the same if you're looking at the page like this. It is the same as having the bass laid down in front of you like this. E, A, D, G. Okay, bottom to top. Then what you will get is you will get some numbers. So you might get 1, 4, 6, open. Okay, so the number on the string tells you which fret to play. Okay, which is nice and easy. All right, and then you'll get other symbols in there, like you might get a 2 slide to a 4. Okay, or you might get a 2 and then a 4 hammer, or this 4 here might be a pull-off, right, which would normally lead to an open string. Okay, we're going to learn those techniques now. Okay, but that is just a bit of guidance in reading tabs. That tells you what you're going to play. So these are the fret numbers, little notes for techniques, and they tell you which string you're on. Cool, let's get into some techniques. Okay, so techniques, there's a bunch of them. We just talked about a few of them. There's also a bunch of mutes and things. There's a whole lot of muting techniques, really, that we'll learn. So let's just start with simple slide. So what I want to do is I want to go from a B to a D on my A string, so you can go ahead and find those notes. Hopefully you know where they are. That is B, that is D. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to slide in between them. Okay, and that's the little rhythm that we're going to play, so you can just match that. Okay, so in order to slide, really all I'm doing is I'm leaving the pressure down on this finger as I move it. Okay, so another note is if you want, as soon as you want to cut a note off, all you need to do is lift the pressure off this finger. Okay, as soon as that pressure comes off, I don't take it right off the string, because then I've got another note. Okay, I just release the pressure, that kills the note. That's one of our muting techniques. Back to our slide. that's nice and easy. The other thing that you'll find bass players do a lot is what's called sliding octaves. So what I might do is I might take this B from here all the way up here. Okay, and that is of course my 14th fret, because 12th is my A again, so my 14th there is the same as my 2nd fret. Okay, but the other way to do that is to find a B on your D string here. So you should know how to do that using your octave pattern and knowing where your B is on your low E string. You know where it is? Okay, so this is my B on my low E string at 7th fret. So 9th fret here is a B. Okay, so now I'm changing strings in between. So what I'm doing is I'm sliding up on this one, and then when I get about to right before where I want to be, I'm just going to play the other string on the right note. Cool, and that's just a way to keep it a shorter distance, which is helpful if you're playing a lot of stuff really fast, to be able to use those shorter distances rather than those longer ones. Cool, and that is slides. Right, so the other technique we talked about was a hammer-on. Okay, so what a hammer-on means is when I hit a note with this finger, one of the fingers on this hand. Okay, I hit the note in order to play it. I don't play it with this hand. Cool. You can use your pinky, you can use second finger, whatever. I suggest actually trying them with different fingers. Okay, bit of practice, you're going to need to get some strength in there. Just another quick note in terms of the way we hold the bass, to make sure we get this hand right, is what we want to look at here is our wrist. We don't want our wrist, I don't know if I can do it. Okay, we don't, try and get you a shot of that. We don't want our wrist all bent up all the time, okay, because it's bad for your wrist. You want to keep your wrist fairly straight. Okay, generally we say your thumb should be around the middle of the back of the neck. That is going to change a bit sometimes when you're playing different stuff and your hand's in a slightly different position, but generally middle of the neck on the back for that thumb. It's just your strongest point to pull against and tends to keep everything else in line. Cool, so same with this wrist. I don't want it bent up too much all the time, just nice and relaxed. Cool. Side note. Anyway, so that was hammer-ons. Okay, a pull-off is when I play a note, and then as I take it off, I'm going to pull the string down. That's why I said it normally leads to like an open note. Well, or if I pull that off, it comes back to whatever other note I'm playing. So when you're doing that, really you're combining pull-offs with hammer-ons. Okay, but that's what those two things mean, which will be your P and your H on tabs if you are looking at those. What it does is it helps us to play stuff really fast without having to play it really fast. Cool. So those are the purposes of those techniques. One of my favorite techniques in bass playing is probably muting, and the different ways you can do it. So we looked at one just before, just releasing the pressure. The other thing you will see a lot of is muting at this end, which you can give a bit of a tap with. So there we're doing different techniques. So that's our slap mute. In between there, I'm releasing the pressure here and playing the note. Cool. So different ways of muting. Just play with those. Have a bit of fun. But when you become a bass player and you want to get into real sort of groove stuff, you're going to use a lot of muting techniques and really thinking about when you're playing and when you're not playing. Even stuff coming after the beat and that sort of thing. Okay. So talking about beat, generally we play. There's a whole lot of different time signatures. The two common ones are going to be 4/4 and 6/8. So 4/4 we just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and to half that we would count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and to half that again we would count 1 and to go to the next step, which would actually be triplets, would be 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a to split that again, which is actually half of the other one, we would count 1E and a 2E and a, so that's 1E and a, 2E and a. Okay, that's just the way you count them. 6/8, so your divisions in 6/8 you would count the same, but you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and generally in 6/8 accents fall on the 1 and the 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and the only difference between that and 3/4 is that in 6/8 the accent on the 4 is slightly later than the one that is on the 1. If they're all the same, it's probably 3/4, which is just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. When you talk about a time signature, the bottom number talks about the division, top number talks about how many of them are in a bar. So 3 quarter notes per bar is 3/4, or 4 quarter notes per bar being 4/4, which is the common one. Cool. Another sidetrack. I'm just trying to throw it all out there for you. Cool. So techniques, muting, slides, pull-offs, hammer-ons. Go ahead and practice those and we will move on. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is what a chord sheet might look like that you might see. So chord sheets generally don't tell you a whole lot. If they give you the right chords, which is always a bonus, they'll write them roughly above the words they're meant to be above, depending on who wrote it. Sometimes that's completely wrong, sometimes the chords aren't even right, and that's where training your ear is a real key thing to do as you develop. But let's say you see a progression like this and we want to play this song. Okay, what we need to know is what we're playing. So C, G, they're easy. We know where those are on our bass. AM, is that like morning? No, this is A minor. Okay, so when you see a little M, that means that it is minor. Okay, and as bass players, we generally don't care that much that that note is minor because we don't play thirds. The only difference between a major and minor chord, if it's just a triad, which most chords are, is that it has a flat 3. We're playing the 1, not the 3, in general. But if we were playing 3s, we would need to know that that has a flat 3. Okay? F is easy again. C major 7, again, we just play C. Okay? G7, so that would be a C major chord with that 7 in our C major scale in it. This one would have the flat 7. That's the same as the 7 in the minor scale. Again, we're just playing G. So life is easy, right? Until we get here, we get a C and an E. Now we don't know which one to play. Okay, so the easiest way to think of these chords is like a fraction. So when we see that, I say C over E. So if I drew it like that, it would be much easier to understand. Okay, this is the low note, that's the note we play. Okay, everyone else plays this chord. Okay, you'll hear some people say that the guitar just plays C. That's not actually true. What the guitar plays is C over E. That is the name of the chord. Okay, it has an E in the bass and they need to play that, and so do you. Cool. So really just wanted to cover that one. Always play the right hand side of those. Okay, unless the bass player in the actual song happens to be playing the left hand side. That does sometimes happen. Okay, cool. F, easy. Right, done. Okay, so I also mentioned earlier that there were some other ways to find those numbers. Okay, let's look at our progression quickly again. Sometimes what you will see is numbers written. So this is in the key of C. Okay, this is my 1, this is a 5, this is a 6, this is a 4, that's a 1 major 7, that's a 5, 7, dominant 7 we would call that. This is a 1 over 3, and that is a 4. Okay, so those numbers relate to the numbers where we place those in the scale. If we play a C major scale and you play it through on your neck, you will find that number 1 is a C, number 2 would be D. C major is actually really easy because it just goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, those are 1 to 8. Cool, so that's how we get those numbers. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that there was another way to find those on the neck, which I will show you because this is handy to know. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to look at patterns. Let's say my 1 is on my low E string. Okay, so let's say my 1 happens to be an A. Okay, we learned that scale. Okay, so 1, 2 is easy because it's right there. 3 we learned is there. 3 can also be there. Okay, so just coming up. 1, 2, 3, because the spacing in that major scale, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, so tone from there to there, tone from there to there, and then we would have a semitone for our 4. Okay, but if this is my 1, my 4 is straight underneath, my 5 is here, so 1 and 5, my 6 is up here, okay, my 6 is also here. So if I skip 2 frets and come back, that is a 6. Okay, my 7 is 1 note before, but most of the notes you're going to be playing are around like the 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 6, yeah, 7, 1, 2, 3, easy. Okay, so that's really easy to see. So the reason I say that is you might be talking to other musicians and they say, hey, we're going to do a pattern, we're going to go 1, 4, 5, 6. So you're going to go 1, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it's real easy to picture that. Okay, if my root note or my 1 is on my A string, let's say it is an E, okay, then my 5th is now straight above it. So before, when my 4th was straight below, now the opposite of that is my 5th is straight above it. So 1, 5, That makes that 4. And up here is 6. Okay, 7 again right before it, or my 7 could be up here. Okay, and 2, just the same, 1, 2, 3, or 3, right before my 4. Okay, that's just some other places to find those numbers. Okay, so we're really getting there now. You can really start learning some songs. The other thing we need to really cover is just different forms of rhythm that you're going to hear. Okay, so the most basic rhythm that you'll hear on bass is just long notes. Cool, and just counting 4 in between. I encourage you to work with a metronome. You can download apps for that too that just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, just to work on your timing until you get that set internally. It's just one of those things you got to work on. So everything you do, practice to metronome, even those scales. Okay, learning to play in time. Okay, playing with drummers is great. When you're playing with drums, playing with the kick drum is really a good way to set rhythm. Just whatever the kick's playing, if it's do-do, do-do, if you can just match that kick drum. Not to say that you don't have options. Okay, some guys say just play what the kick plays, but there are options as a bass player. You can play what the kick plays, you can play around the kick and that sort of thing. As you get more experience, you'll learn all that stuff. But okay, so long notes, simple. I'm going to speeden it up so you don't get bored. Okay, and then you might play twice that. You might do what we generally call running. You might do that twice as fast. Okay, see why we need both our fingers. Yeah, just a whole lot of different rhythms because you might miss stuff in the middle. Okay, so it's quite common to play like right at the end of the bar like that before you move on to the next one. Just different rhythms. It's all about listening to the songs, hearing the rhythms that you're hearing, and playing along with them, making them sound like that. And then it's just learning a whole lot of songs and just practicing over and over again. Remember not to give up. The only difference between you and famous bass players is that they just practiced heaps. Okay, the only difference between famous bass players and the guy who started playing bass but didn't get anywhere was that he gave up, they didn't. Okay, it'll get to the point where you think it's really hard, but trust me, the more you do it, the easier it will get. The more you learn and the more you know and the more techniques and experience that you get, the easier it gets to learn stuff. Now I sit down to learn a song, it takes me hardly any time compared to the hours and hours and hours I used to spend like just drilling over a song trying to work stuff out. It just gets easier the more experience you get. Cool. So my big tip is, man, just stick at it. Cool. So this has just been like a real quick brush over these techniques. I'm just hearing in my head that you want to learn how to slap, don't you? Okay, we'll do that next. But in the meantime, yeah, this is a quick brush over the basic techniques. Learn all those first before we move on to slap. I'm going to grab my other bass for this. But yeah, we'll have a quick look at how to slap. Okay, so I've got my 5-string bass now, just because it's got newer strings on it. The other one's got old strings, which are no good for slapping. That's your first tip. So just ignore this guy here. This is my low B string. Okay, just thinking about teaching you slap reminded me that there is another technique, which is a pick. Okay, so the second tip for slapping is that not everything is slapped. Some people like to just slap everything, but not everything is meant to be slapped. Ask yourself the question, what is the guy on the track I am playing doing? Is he slapping? In that case I slap. Is he playing with a pick? In that case I play with a pick. Is he playing with his fingers? In that case I play with my fingers. Okay, so that reminded me that we need to learn to use a pick. Okay, which is quite simple. What we're going to do is first finger, cameras are so hard. Basically we're just going to put thumb and first finger together like that, and then we're just going to chuck the pick in there with the pointy end sticking out. Okay, I can make that as short or as long as I want. If it's too long, I'm probably going to drop it. There are different thicknesses of pick. This is actually one of my guitar picks, which is probably a bit too thin to play bass. You want a bit of a thicker one. Okay, so you can down pick. Or if you're picking both directions, you're just gonna, as you come through, you're just gonna turn your hand slightly to drag the pick back up. Cool. And you'll notice that's got a distinct sound. Over that. Cool. So that's a pick. Another thing to practice. Cool. Slapping. Generally, you learn all the other techniques first. This is at the end of our video. What we're going to do is we're going to take our thumb on our right hand. It's got a bony bit on the side there. That's what we're going to use. We're going to use that to bounce the string off the last fret here. Cool, so you can practice going through each string like that. Keeping your thumb fairly well in line with the neck. We don't want to be up like that because it gets messy when we're trying to hit one string, but we're actually hitting like 3 strings. Cool, and then what we're going to do with our first finger is we're going to pluck up. Quite often it's done in octaves. Let's just do it in an octave. So we'll play a D. So that's actually my A string there. 5th fret on my A string. You can use your hammer-on technique there too. Play open. Cool. But that's the basics. Cool. It really depends on the song you're playing, what you're going to be picking up and what you're going to be thumbing. Depends on the song. But if you learn to play an octave like that, that gives you basic technique. Cool. So nice and easy. And you can just try playing different stuff, but playing it with slap instead of whatever else. Cool. Yeah, as another thing you to work on it, practice it. But anyway, this has obviously been a whole lot of stuff like crammed in. You're gonna have to like go back over this video and watch different bits and actually work your way through stuff. But I hope this has helped you out. I really just wanted to cram everything into like one video, just to give you like the basic techniques and stuff that you need, that you can then go and develop without having to go through like 100 different videos, not really knowing what you're looking for. Okay, this is what you're looking for. Basic techniques, put them together, practice them, learn songs, get together with some mates and jam, and you'll grow. Cool. So remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.